Now do it.
Sounds real good.
You're a magician all of a sudden. You pull this out slowly.
Okay.
Now you got it?
I got it. All right.
No, now reach in. Now pull it out slowly. No, real slow,
Real slow.
so they can see it.
And when did you start doing magic?
Well, I saw Thurston's in Cincinnati, and I was about 7 years old, and then I went home and started doing tricks. I guess I was about 14. A preacher asked me to come over and entertain the young people, and I rigged up all the tricks I could think of and did a show for these young people in the church. As time went on, I broke house records on Broadway at Low State Theater. As a matter of fact, I played Low State Theater 3 times in a row, and the 3rd time I played it, I broke the house record. Nobody's gonna beat it now. They've torn the theater down. One of my early shows was in Cincinnati, Ohio, and then I went to Broadway in New York.
And you had was it Gip the Wonder Dog? Or Jip, excuse me, Jip.
Oh, yeah. I taught him to jump over high objects. The way I did it, I took 2 window shutters and hinged them together so he could do it. First I started him running over it. Then I kept getting him up higher and higher until it was 9 feet and he could go right over it. Went it straight up and down. I wouldn't have had Tammy if I hadn't done magic. I bought 3 lovely homes in California. I had $1 million yacht. I sailed around the world. And I've had 2 Douglas airliners that I flew. By doing magic, I got a contract in Columbia Studios, and I made about 46 films altogether. I was doing a show in Hollywood at the Playtime Theater. Hitler was not very popular in those days. I had a comedian imitate Hitler. And then the Marines grabbed him and we put him on a buzzsaw and I cut his head off. And then we put the head in a sausage grinder and out came German wieners. And it got a lot of publicity, and I was offered a contract with several different studios in Hollywood, and I wound up with one with Columbia. And I used to do the Falcon detective series. I watched them long before I made them, and I liked them and never dreamed I'd ever do the part.
John, what do you think of magic today?
You mean the guys that are doing it today?
Yes, sir.
They're better dancers. all that dancing is old-fashioned and out of date, and when they go to see a magician, they go to see magic, not a dancing act. There are a lot of good performers today. Yet I used to work with Red Skelton, but they don't have another Red Skelton or Danny Kaye, not yet.
You cut off Danny Kaye's head, didn't you?
It was Danny Kaye that gave me the movie break. He impersonated the Hitler, and then I cut his head off. Oh, the Depression. I had an idea how to sell automobiles. 1934, right in the heart of the Depression. I saw a film on the screen, and it was called Over and Over Again, and there was another one called Mohair Velvet, and another one was called Knee Action. Nobody went to see them. They didn't have television in those days, so they made these little films, rented a theater, put them on the screen, and let people come free. And people didn't bother to go see an hour or 2 of advertising. I went to Connersville, Indiana, and took a job as a salesman. And I sold more automobiles than all of the members of all the salesmen for that company put together, including the sales manager. And then I took my record and I went up to Zone Office 25 in Indianapolis, and I said, I know how to sell automobiles. And this was before the advertising committee. And they said, you certainly do. How do you do it? I said, you're putting out these films and people go to see them free, but they don't come because it's all advertising. Now, if you will put a stage show, advertise $1 to see the show, you will get a crowd. They said, oh, nobody pay $1 to come and see the advertising. I said, no, they won't have to. We'll give all the salesmen a card. Have you driven the new 1934 Chevrolet? And your name and address, and name and address of someone that you know that might be interested in a new or used car. And then they could put 25 cents with that ticket and see the show. They said, what do you want? I said, I want the 25 cents. I did it for a year for General Motors and then another year for Ford. And I made quite a few bucks. The little town I lived in had 300 people. Population 300, that was counting my mother's chickens, I think. They wrecked that airplane. I asked the owner of the airport, I said, I'd like to repair that plane. And he laughed about it. And yeah, the experts say it's a write-off. But he allowed me to go to work on it, and I repaired it. And I used to take it down the runway and just hop it off the ground about, a foot and land it. That was the beginning of my flying days. As a matter of fact, I bought 2 DC-3s and carried my show in them later years. They were the airliner of the day.
Now, did you fly in any combat?
Beg pardon?
Any combat flying?
Oh, well, not intentionally.
Not intentionally.
In the ferry command, we were delivery boys, but if we got attacked, then we'd fight our way out of it. And I was on my way to England, to the Air Force base there, about 100 miles off the coast of England. Something said to me, look around, and I did, and here were 3 Messerschmitts coming in on me. And I pulled it up, and I did what they call an Emmelmann. It's a German maneuver. You bring it up and roll it, and bring it around and let your cannons go. I knocked one of them on the first time, and the other one came in and he went down and didn't pull out in time, flew right into the ocean. I was at the officers' quarter in London, and I started to tell the story, and I had a driver that drove my Jeep, and he said, sir, may I tell the rest of the story? When I knocked this one out and the other one went in the ditch, this guy waved his wings, which is surrendering. And the guy with my driver was the guy that surrendered. And he told the rest of the story. Unusual. After the war, I was in show business. Well, I got a contract short not long after the war. I made a total of about 46 films.
And your first film was Honky Tonk?
No, the first Tonk was Honky. That's right. He could be my agent. That was with Clark Gable and Lana Turner. I was supposed to teach him how to do some magic, and he was so all thumbs. And finally, the producer came to me and he said, I know you have your own show, but if you would do this for Clark, I'll double your salary. And he increased it from 1 week to 4 weeks, I think it was. Gable was, I'd say, come on, let's practice. He'd say, oh, let's have a cup of coffee. And finally, I did it for him. They made me up to look like Gable, and I was naked from the waist up, and so was Gable. And I wrote home and I told my family, I said, it's going to be on the screen, look at it. I got a letter back from my father. He said, well, we saw the movie, but we didn't see you. Now, every performance for, I don't know how many, it was about for 3 months that we played there. Singapore. Now, if you stop and think, every seat in the house was bringing about 20 bucks. And then they, up in front of the stage, they were getting a much higher price. And that group of seats, there were about 300 seats, paid all of our expenses. And every day the thing was filled. I had $50,000 every performance coming from that.
Wow.